Tonight, more. The Republican Senate nominee stands accused of one of the most serious sex crimes, sexual contact with a minor. As a politician, Moore has argued consensual sex between adults of the same gender should be illegal.
Homosexual conduct should be illegal. Yes.
Should be illegal.
Yes.
There we are, and I'm going right to my panel. David Frum is a former Bush 43 speechwriter. Roland Martin is host and managing editor of NewsOne Now, and Joan Walsh, national affairs correspondent at The Nation. Joan, beginning with you, your reaction to this set of allegations, this woman speaking out on the record, and as I say, it coming against a politician who's made moral and even perceived sexual morality the centerpiece of his entire political career.
We've seen it before, Ari. He appears now to be kind of a creepy hypocrite. And, you know, as a journalist, we're all journalists. We've all seen good work. We've seen bad work. This reporting by these three female, I should add, Washington Post reporters has the hallmark. It's the hallmark of good reporting. We've got 4 women on the record, and we've got about another 25 sources who were told about these various contacts in real time. We've got the mother of the 14-year-old victim. The victim is now, I believe, 52, who, you know, feels guilty looking back at the fact that this man preyed on this young woman, said he would take care of her so her mother didn't have to bring her into a child custody hearing. So it's just a set of accusations so foul. And, you know, the fighting back now is it's fake news from, you know, the National Democrats. That's just not true. There's no evidence for that. And I'd really like to hear more Republicans than Senator John McCain. He's the only one who's come out and said he's got to step aside. Everybody else is saying, if this is true, how are you going to determine whether it's true, Mitch McConnell? 30 people on the record isn't good for you? Excuse me, I misspoke. I don't think all 30 are on the record. But the 4 women who allege this occurred, their names are on the record. They're Trump voters. They live, I believe, all of them still live in Alabama. They are hurting. They're embarrassed. I don't know what more the Republican establishment is going to need to say, this sounds very believable, and we're concerned, and we need you to step aside.
Well, Roland, journalistically, we're obligated to repeat the denials. That is a part of this story, and this will take time to ferret out, although Joan mentions this is not a random blog post or a social media accusation. This has been reported out. It's been through the Washington Post standards. It has people on the record. When you look at this, Roland, what do you think it means in a town? We're here on an evening in Washington, a town that's seen its share of hypocrisy, but these allegations suggest extreme hypocrisy for former Judge Moore.
Well, the issue is not what happens in D.C., what happens in the state of Alabama. I want to know what's going to happen to these white conservative evangelicals who moralize. The question is, will they make a judgment, or will they simply say, well, you know what, we forgive? You already have the Alabama auditor who has made this utterly ridiculous comment by saying, well, you know, I mean, Mary was a teenager, and Joseph was an adult, and they had Jesus, so this is not necessarily legal. And you're going, I'm sorry, are you actually saying that? But also keep in mind, it was a few years ago when you had a federal judicial nominee who was accused of domestic violence, and where Alabama officials waited a very long time to go against him. It was Congresswoman Terry Sewell who was the first one to say he needs to withdraw, and it forced the other ones to come out. What white conservative evangelicals do will determine what happens to Roy Moore. Yeah,
I mean, just to give context to that before I go to David, you're the Alabama state auditor quote, because you said it and I heard it, but I thought, wow. Is everyone at home processing that? Let me read it. Take Joseph and Mary. Mary was a teenager and Joseph was an adult carpenter. They became parents of Jesus. There's just nothing immoral or illegal here. Maybe just a little bit unusual.
I will
say as a journalist, false. It is illegal, but go ahead, Joan, and then David.
I also have to say, as someone who was raised Catholic, the principle that Mary actually did not conceive the normal way, that this was a virgin birth, that God sent Jesus to her and Joseph took care of him, there was nothing inappropriate, shall we say, about that relationship.
Joan, stop reading the Bible. What's wrong?
I don't think we need to get drawn down this theological.
We're way out of my lane of religious expertise, David. But go ahead.
So I hear a couple of observations. The first is I expect there will be more such revelations. That someone who has done this many times in the same way, obviously, again, assuming the stories are true, but they do seem credible, there's a pattern here, and the pattern will repeat. So there will be more such cases, I imagine, that we will hear. But second, I think it's important to say, look, the moral test is 366 days in the rearview mirror. Republicans will rally to him. That the shock always diminishes. If within the first 24 hours you're not out, you're probably staying. And Daniel Dale of the Toronto Star has been calling Republican county chairs all over the state. I don't think he's found yet one who is prepared to pull the plug on Moore. And remember, this is going to be a very important seat. Moore will have the seat should he win for 2 years, but those are the 2 years in which the tax plan will be voted on, and of course control of the Senate is in the balance. Because 2018 is a very difficult, precarious year for the Republicans. If the seat is given away in 2017, it could well be decisive to the outcome of majority control of the Senate in 2018.
But they're not worried about that. Here's why. First and foremost, Article 1, Section 5, the Senate does not have to seat him, even if he wins. Republicans in Alabama will likely say we have limited options to remove him from the ballot. Polls showing he's up some 17 points. The strategy will be, look, weather this thing out. Hopefully, in a red state like Alabama, he beats Doug Jones. If he wins, the Senate then chooses not to seat him. The governor simply makes another appointment who is Republican, who will appoint a Republican. And so the hope, though, is that he is able to still beat Doug Jones in the general election. That's the real issue there. But they understand they control the levels of power. The Senate does not have to seat him even if he wins.
That's too many moving parts. If he wins, he will be seated, and he will be just like Congressman Gianforte, who beat up a journalist.
Right.
People thought that was, unusual, but he's seated, and he's a crucial part of the tax reform coalition. The Republican hold on power is very precarious. The record of legislation is very thin, and I think a lot of Republicans at some level know they have only a certain number of months to make their impress on the record before events catch up with them.
And for a party that is evangelical and it's dealing with someone who was claiming to be a religious moral leader, what does that tell us?
It tells us that, first of all, white evangelicals do not care. Because if you look at Jerry Falwell Jr., you look at Ralph Reed, you look at Tony Perkins, you look at Robert Jeffers, you look at how they have defended anything and everything that Donald Trump has said and done, they don't care. White conservative evangelicals also care about power. All they care about is a right-wing judge on the Supreme Court. All they care about are the same judges on the federal bench. They don't care. They are not, as I've said before when I criticized Paula White, they are not about the prophetic, P-R-O-P-H-E-T. They care about profit, P-R-O-F-I-T. That's their focus.
And let me go back to Joan on one more point, because Roy Moore is someone that many of us have followed for a long time. I mean, I was following him when he was making his signature issue, the Ten Commandments statue. Again,
sure.
can't be said enough, because it's, I don't know what it is, Shakespeare, House of Cards. I'm out of references, Joan, and if you know me, you know it's hard for me to run out of references.
Very hard, Ari.
But I will read to you his other defining position in this Trump era and the undercurrents that David Frum was elucidating. Roy Moore also holds the position, we'll put it on the screen, that Keith Ellison, a duly elected member of Congress, should not be allowed in Congress because of his religion, which happens to be Muslim. Joan.
And he denied a lesbian mother custody of her child, even though her ex-husband apparently had some abuse allegations against him simply because she was a lesbian. So he's a real enemy of freedom. He's a real enemy of gay and lesbian people, of women, of people of color. I want to sound like the optimist, which I rarely am, especially in the last year, since last November 8th. But I think you've got to look at Virginia. I know, David. I'm not saying that Alabama is Virginia. But the backlash, it's not. I know. I've even been there. Not, it's not Virginia. I'm not saying that. But I think you have to look at what happened in Virginia with these women rising up and running and possibly helping Democrats take over the State House on Tuesday night. I don't think Alabama women are going to sleep through this. And I hope that there's some good local and national organizing around it that is trans-party. That is just, you can't treat women like this anymore.
In Virginia, the local Democratic Party chose a candidate for governor who fit with the voters they needed to win in the state. In Alabama, for reasons I don't understand, I'm not a Democrat, they decided that they wanted to have a national liberal icon, not a competitive Alabama candidate.
And the last thing we didn't get to, because it's early in this story, although we'll bring more coverage as warranted, is whether any law enforcement aspect to more recent charges also impacts this race. We're not there yet, but we have seen patterns before. I want to thank Roland Martin and David Frum right here in Washington for the analysis.